In the world of postgraduate education, somebody has to develop the classes and programs that lead to degrees. The challenge, however, is who? Who has the experience and insights into the topic and at the same time can design a structured education? How do these programs come together? What credentials does the course designer and instructor need? What does a job like this look like? In this episode of Careers That Matter, Mark Selman, PhD, the director of the Executive MBA in Aboriginal Business and Leadership at the Beedie School of Business, takes us inside his career. So you have an interesting job. What is it? How do you describe what your job is?
Well, I'm sort of semi-retired now, so my job is even more interesting in lots of ways. But for many years, I ran customized educational programs at the Beedie School of Business, which was absolutely wonderful because it allowed me to develop all kinds of relationships outside of the university. And universities are amazing places to be around, but they can be a bit stultifying. And being able to work between the university and the fantastic resources that are there and outside organizations that might have specialized interests in education was just a tremendous thing for me. It gave me all kinds of opportunities.
So what kinds of programs were these that you were customizing?
Well, I started probably the first I did some small things like I was hired by Fraser University when they were just building the downtown campus, so almost 30 years ago now, maybe 30 years ago. And there were all kinds of things that needed to be done. And the university at the time was primarily thinking about the campus as a way to get close to the business community downtown. But because of its location on Hastings Street, it was actually between about 6 or 7 different communities. And so it was a fascinating time. So I was fortunate. I developed relationships with the downtown east side, especially with Ken Leotier, because he was just involved in starting United We Can, the recycling depot. That was run by and invented by people who collected bottles and cans out of dumpsters. And I saw there was an opportunity to connect the university to other communities besides the business community. The business community is important to me, and I was hired, I think, partly because I had run my own businesses and I had experience in that world.
Both as a business owner and a business consultant, correct?
Primarily as a business owner at that stage. I had been in the construction and manufacturing businesses. But then this gave me an opportunity to link my interests and professional qualifications in the area of education with communities that I cared about. And so that was probably very early on. I developed this program with United We Can. They wanted to have a board. None of the people who were available to be on the board had any kind of knowledge about governance of boards of nonprofits. So we helped them learn about that. And a variety of other things. So that was one foray. We developed lecture series, kind of ordinary university stuff on the one hand. But then I got an opportunity there was a guy from Canadian Pacific Railway.
Yeah.
His name was Joe Bracken, probably is Joe Bracken, although I haven't talked to him for years. He came to me and he said, we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in our Western Canada office, which was then in Vancouver, on training for our people. And they take more and more about whatever they're good at. So if they are computer network administrators, they go to workshops on computer networks. And if they organize trains in rail yards, they go to conferences where they focus on that. And everything makes people more and more specialized, and nothing brings them together. And we know that our business is changing. It's going to change very rapidly over the next while. And people have to be able to move around the organization if they're going to stay. And he said, we have lots of people who have specialized knowledge but no general education, and that's holding them back in their careers. They can't advance and they can't transfer into another area of our business. So we want to have a way for people to get a recognition, educational recognition and knowledge that's more general than they would normally take, and that is completely portable, because we know that not all these people are going to be able to stay at CP, and they need to have this recognized wherever they go. So he and I told him no. I told him no. There was no way
to start.
Yeah, there was no way we could do that at SFU. We could not develop a degree program, which I assumed that's what he really wanted, was a degree program that would accept people with all different mishmash of educational credentials and give them credit for what they had studied, even if it wasn't academic, and then take them through in a timely manner to a degree. And I said, go to the Open Learning Agency or somebody like that. So that was the end of the conversation. 2 weeks later, he showed up again and said, I've thought about that. That's not what we want. We want a degree from an established university that has its own standards, that carries some weight with it.
Yeah.
And we don't want to go to the Open Learning Agency or some place like that. And I think you should be able to do this. So I said, okay, well, I'll ask a few people. And I went to the Dean of Arts at the time and said, I have this inquiry. I know it's not what we normally do, but it kind of fits with what we say we would like to be able to do. And it definitely fits with the idea of having a downtown campus, that we would actually respond to what people downtown are saying they need, as opposed to telling them what we've designed for them that they could come and take. And so, and he said, that's fantastic. He said, that's wonderful. We have a budget freeze, we have a tuition freeze, we can't develop any new programs in the university. Our hands are tied around everything. If you and I are smart about this, we'll figure out a way to develop that program and develop it in a way that can get around all these hurdles to new program development. And so we worked together, and we worked with CP Rail, and eventually we worked with BC Hydro, because CP Rail moved its head office in the middle of the time we were working with them, and so they didn't have as many people here locally. So we convinced one of the vice presidents at BC Hydro, who happened to be a student in a graduate program that we both taught in, that this would be a good idea. And we put together a cohort of students, and we gave them 2 years of university education in over a 3-year period, and it was a mixture of management and liberal arts, and it was very successful.
Did that wind up giving you a template to produce or generate other new programs?
Yes, in all sorts of little ways, but we basically developed the idea of customized programs. There's a lot of technical details I'd have to go into about how you can get approval for things within universities, but we basically exploited loopholes in the way that the university structures these things, and there was a provision for an individual student to be able to undertake a specialized program of study if they wanted to design something for themselves, if they could get an academic committee together and so on. And we just said, oh, well, if you can do that for one person, why can't you do it for 30 people? And so we ended up developing this customized program, and it was very successful when we were working with corporations, and then I ended up having another opportunity. I moved somewhere else in the university, and when the Dean of Arts was no longer the dean, it just the program was not continued with at the same level and with the same verve that we had undertaken it. It did last for 10 years, and it made a big difference. So anyway, that was one thing. We developed the idea of programs where students don't pay tuition, because it was paid for entirely by their company. Yeah. So we had contracts with the company, which we established that pattern because we wanted to get around the tuition freeze that was in place provincially. And that was successful, and we've used it with other programs since.
So are you a department head or are you a professor? Like, what exactly is your role? Because it sounds like you need to understand not only the curriculum, the development of the curriculum, the delivery, but also how to navigate your way through the labyrinth of rules and regulations within a university environment.
Right. Well, throughout most of my career at the university, I escaped categorization. I mean, I was in a unit of employees, but it was not as a faculty member. I was a faculty member for a few years on a part-time basis while I had another appointment. Frankly, they didn't know what to do with me exactly, and there were big red lines around my position that no one ever again would be appointed into an appointment like this with the mix of things that I did, which crossed over between having academic authority over programs and being an administrator, and that the university doesn't really have that. So when I was first there, I thought, I should be a faculty member, right? I've got a PhD. There's no reason why I shouldn't be a faculty member. I should have tenure like all the other people I'm working with. And then after a while, I realized I didn't want that at all. I loved my role of being able to move around. I moved from continuing studies to the Faculty of Business. I kept doing the same kind of work. And the position was kind of immaterial because I had developed a bit of a reputation for being able to do these things that other people in the university didn't do. And I moved over to business because Cominco, the smelting company, wanted to have graduate courses for their engineers because they had downsized so much that their engineers were being thrust into management positions without knowing anything about management. And they used to just absorb it because of being in the business for a while. But now they were finding that they weren't absorbing it fast enough because they didn't have the mentorship available and everything was rushed in terms of these transitions. And so they we're ending up with managers who didn't understand about corporate law or about finance or about environmental issues because their business was changing. They had to be freshly aware of environmental issues, and now Indigenous relations would also fall on that list. So the Faculty of Business didn't know how to do that, right? That's not how universities work. They sit back, they advertise their programs, people come, they sign up as individuals, and they said, how can we put on a program for 30 managers of a company for credit? They want it for credit, and we just don't have a way of doing that. So, but that was the kind of stuff I did.
So would it be safe to call you an education innovator?
Well, I think so. Our MBA in Indigenous Business and Leadership was on the list of most innovative things done in BC, that like a business award for that. So we were in the top 20 innovations in BC that year. I think we were 10th maybe. So yes, I would be proud to be recognized as an educational innovator.
So, they draw this red circle around your name and go, nobody's ever going to be allowed to do this again. But somebody might be watching this going, well, I don't know, Mark, I want to be like you. What would be an essential element in my own development that would put me in a position, should it arise, to possibly seize upon something similar to what you're doing? What do you think is like key to being able to succeed in what you're doing?
Yeah, well, it's a very, very good question, one that I've puzzled about quite a bit, because I have had lots of people come to me and say, oh, I want a job like yours. And I say, well, they don't really have jobs like mine. You have to create it. You have to make it. So, it helps a lot. In a university, having a PhD is a huge advantage. I think if I hadn't had a PhD, I couldn't have finagled all the things I finagled. I wouldn't have had the credibility. Yeah. But universities respond very much to relatively small amounts of external money and other forms of motivation. So if you can create meaningful links, whether it's in the downtown east side and that makes the university eligible for provincial government funding that it might otherwise not get access to, or whether it's working with a business where they can write a contract to have a bunch of managers educated. Right. That kind of stuff has a high currency value, not with faculty members in the university, but with the administration of the university.
Yeah.
And then you need to have some luck with contacts. Like fortunately, I developed this great relationship with the Dean of Arts, which is a very important position at SFU. The Dean of Arts is, one of it's probably half the university reports to the Dean of Arts. So, yeah. So I was just lucky to find somebody who shared some of my interests and values around this. And of course, you can hope for administrators like Andrew Patter. Andrew, as the president, you don't really get involved in programming or anything like that, but he set an example and he set an image as an engaged university that made the kind of work that I was doing actually fit what the university said it wanted to do, which it hadn't really previously until that point. And I was also lucky early in my career. Jack Blaney, who eventually became president of the university, was influential. Obviously, he had built the downtown campus basically, and he had respect for me as a programmer. He always used to use the word programmer. That I was someone who knew how to design an educational program, which, was partly because of my education, but was also just from, I'd been an entrepreneur. I knew how to do stuff, right? How to get things done, how to win people over when you needed to, and how to line up the resources and plan and stuff like that you can't really get taught anywhere. You have to learn it.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Great. Well, a pleasure to talk to you. I could talk to you all day, to tell you the truth.
Thank you very much.